National has made its play for the rural vote with a 19-point plan called Getting Back to Farming. It includes doubling the number of RSE workers, scrapping the requirement to pay migrant workers the median wage of $30 an hour, and banning foreign investors from buying land to turn into carbon farms. It's also promising to cut red tape with a 2-for-1 deal. For every new regulation local and central government want to bring in, they have to scrap 2 existing regulations. And controversially, it would bring back live animal exports. But the policy has infuriated environmentalists who say National's ideas are lazy, bad for our waterways, and a grab bag of one-liners. Here's political reporter Amelia Wade.
This is Donald's dairy farm, and it has some cows. Also, some National politicians promising to get back to farming. E-I-E-I-O.
I have to say it, but Labor has been waging a war on farmers by burying them in a heap of red tape.
Red tape the Nats plan to remove.
A 2-for-1 rule for every new agricultural regulation. 2 must be removed.
I think it's just a ridiculous proposal. I'm not sure who came up with that.
National's feed bag for farmers also comes with redefining wetlands, amending stock exclusion rules, that's fencing waterways, and that pushback blanket incoming winter grazing rules that restrict stock feeding on small areas. Rules brought in because some farmers were caught putting animal welfare at risk.
The catchment by catchment approach is better. So where we're standing today, the rules will be different because this is a clay soil and actually in winter probably muddier than up north where we're going where the soil is freer draining.
So at a high level, reasonably happy with what we've seen here. It's been issues that we've been concerned about for a number of years now.
National would also like to see the return of live animal exports, a controversial industry which was worth about $340 million to New Zealand, 0.2% of our primary sector exports. But it was banned after a livestock ship sank in 2020, killing 41 crew members, including Kiwis, and about 6,000 animals. Here, National's actually proposing more red tape.
I can assure New Zealanders that these animals are treated to the absolute highest level of welfare standards that we can expect.
There is no way of making live animal export by sea humane, and there's no way of controlling what happens to those animals when they get to the end destinations.
Greenpeace and the Green Party are worried what the Take 2-for-1 rule deal would do to waterway regulations.
It's a grab bag of one-liners, and it just shows why National shouldn't be in government.
New Zealand doesn't need more rules, it needs better regulation based on fewer rules.
The Agriculture Minister says the government's actually been regulating farmers for their own survival because international markets are increasingly wanting sustainable supply chains.
If National was to ever get in power and implement these policies, it would set us back.
And we're going to continue to support our farmers and the sector, and we're also going to continue to protect the environment.
An environment which has now become an election battleground.
Kia ora, Amelia. So how's this policy package going to go down with voters, do you think?
Mike, today's policy package was no play for the votes of climate warriors. Instead, it was a pitch to the rural voters who feel that they've been buried in change and paperwork. National also says its plan to get New Zealand out of a recession would be to grow New Zealand's biggest export sector, agriculture, but that's at loggerheads with environmentalists who say growing New Zealand's biggest polluters would only take us backwards. There was also a bit of, but wait, there's more from the Blue team today. They're yet to announce their plan on how they would tax farmers for the emissions of their animals, which is the most contentious politics in farming. So today, giving farmers what they will like to hear and leaving what they perhaps won't to another day.
Amelia Wade, live from Parliament, Tēnā koe.
Well, critics say National's plan to ban foreign investors buying land to turn into carbon farms won't have much impact because most conversions are being done by local corporates.
And people who live in rural communities say the practice is threatening their way of life. Adam Hollingworth reports.
Farmer Lincoln Grant says this steep terrain on his neighbour's lands near Pahiatua will soon be covered in pine forests for carbon credits, and he's worried.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, events of the last couple of months have shown us what happens to pine trees and pine debris on steep slopes. It ends up in the stream and with catastrophic problems, you know, in times of flood.
Grant says residents of northern Wairarapa are already feeling hemmed in by the widespread conversion of farming into forestry.
The community over there is just getting hollowed out. There's loss of jobs and all the rural support sectors. It's just ripping the guts out of heartland New Zealand, really.
Under National's plan, foreign investors won't be able to claim carbon credits.
It's changing the nature of rural communities. So when you lose huge farms like that, you lose kids at rural schools, you lose ancillary businesses that support those towns. And so it's changing the nature, and we're going to regret that big time in about 30 years from now.
But Grant says neighbours are selling out more to local corporates than foreign investors, with dire consequences.
It really doesn't matter whether it's happening locally driven investment companies or overseas. The end result is still devastating for the rural communities.
CEO of Forest Owners Association David Rhodes says members, including foreigners, own 70% of the planted forests in New Zealand, and he believes none are in the business of carbon-only farming. They are only planting to harvest. But Rhodes says it's not the death knell of rural New Zealand.
Overall, the net impact of forestry is actually net positive, economically positive, but there may be different patterns of employment. So we can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to have the same community makeup that you might have had before forestry.
The government says it closed the door to foreign investment in carbon forests last August. Foreign investors can only invest in wood that will be harvested.
The reality is that many New Zealanders are investing in buying those farms. Very hard call, and National will have to explain whether it is prepared to stop New Zealanders buying farms for the purposes that they want to use them for.
After Gabrielle, a government review of pine forestry will report back to ministers at the end of the month. Adam Hollingworth, Newshub.